Welcome to Foundational You with Dr. Dean Hackett, the home of biblical teaching and cultural impact. We are so glad that you joined us for today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Dean, read his blog, and find more episodes at fdeanhackett.com. Now for today's episode.
We've been asking ourselves, where are we on God's time clock? And then trying to place that and discover that, we've been studying the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 20 to 27, but also connecting that with Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem on what is commonly called Palm Sunday. And what we discovered is that Jesus' triumphant entry connects directly with that prophecy in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. Let's read a portion of that again to refamiliarize ourselves and to establish what God is actually saying. In Daniel, chapter 9, beginning at verse 24, we read, 70 weeks have been determined for your people and upon your holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make atonement for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, that happened, we discovered, under Antiochus Longimanus in 444 BC, when he gave the decree that the Jewish people could return to their homeland, rebuild the city of Jerusalem, and rebuild the temple after the first temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed by Babylon. But he said, and from the going forth to command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Prince Messiah shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or a total of 69 weeks. And we said that the Prince Messiah, that was when Jesus Christ entered the city of Jerusalem in his triumphant entry in March of 33 AD. Then he goes on to say, shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. It shall be built again with plaza and moat, even in the times of trouble. After the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the troops of the prince who shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. To the end of it shall come with a flood, and until the end of the war desolations are determined, and he shall make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the offerings to cease, and on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed destruction is poured out on the desolator. And so we've discovered that those first 69 weeks was fulfilled that week when Jesus Christ came into the city, triumphantly declared to be Messiah, declared to be the son of David, declared to be the king that everyone had been looking for, and then was crucified, buried, rose from the dead on the third day, and then 32 years later, the Jerusalem was destroyed again, and the temple was destroyed again, and that fulfilled the 69 weeks. But what about that 70th week? Here we've been 2,000 years waiting for the fulfillment of that 70th week. What about that? Well, Jesus actually talked about that that last week before he was crucified, when it's recorded in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 21. Let's look at it together. Luke 21, beginning at verse 20. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know its desolation has drawn near. Now that happened in AD 70, when Titus led the Roman legions to lay siege on the city of Jerusalem. Eventually, 1.5 million Jews are going to die inside the city. The city's going to be destroyed. The second temple is going to be destroyed. Listen to what he goes on to say. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the city depart. Let not those who are in the country enter into it. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. He's referring directly to Daniel chapter 9 right there, that all things written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who nurse in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword. They will be led away captive to all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, Jesus was directly referencing Daniel chapter 9, but he added a component to it that had not been shown to Daniel. But Jesus gave us this. Until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, Jerusalem is going to be trampled under the foot of the Gentiles. From AD 70 until 1948, Jerusalem was trampled under the foot of the Gentiles. It was controlled by the Gentiles, by Rome, and then by the Ottoman Empire, and then the British Mandate, always under the control of the Gentiles. But something else was going on. Jesus had said to his disciples when he wrote, before he ascended back to heaven, he said, Matthew 28:19, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Mark chapter 16, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, and he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. Jesus was saying, this is the time of the Gentiles. We're going to take the gospel to the Gentiles. Yes, there have been Jewish people saved. Hundreds of Jewish people have come to Messiah. But the primary ministry has been to the nations of the world, to the Gentiles. But that 70th week is going to turn back to the Jewish people and to Israel. Jeremiah calls it the time of Jacob's trouble. It's going to be a time. In Revelation, talks about the 144,000 Jewish missionaries, 12,000 missionaries from all 12 tribes, carrying the gospel to the Jewish people. It's going to be a time when God's turning back to them. But the time between the fulfillment of the 69th week, Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem, that week of him being tested, being crucified, buried, rose from the dead on Sunday, and then AD 70, when Jerusalem was destroyed, from then until the time of the 70th week, this has been that time of the Gentiles. However, May 14th, 1948, Israel was established as a nation again. And then, June 7th, 1967, they won the Six-Day War, and now they had control of Jerusalem again for the first time since for 2,000 years. And on that day, June 7th, 1967, Moshe Dayan, the defense minister of Israel, declared, quote, this morning, the Israel Defense Forces liberated Jerusalem. We have united Jerusalem, the divided capital of Israel. We have returned to the holiest of our holy places, never to part from it again. Never to part from it again. To our Arab neighbors, we extend also at this hour, and with added emphasis at this hour, our hand in peace. And to our Christian and Muslim fellow citizens, we solemnly promise full religious freedom and rights. We did not come to Jerusalem for the sake of other people's holy places and not to interfere with the adherents of other faiths, but in order to safeguard its entirety and to live there together with others in unity. Wow, what a difference from what is being declared around the world today, that Israel is an apartheid state, that it's an occupier. What you need to understand from the very beginning, May 14th, 1948, Muslims and Arabs had full citizenship. They could run for office. Many of them had been elected to the Knesset. They have full employment. They can start businesses and own industries. That is not an apartheid state. This is Jerusalem. So we've seen two of the six things now that we said must happen for that 70th week to be fulfilled. Israel had to become a nation again. They had to have Jerusalem as their capital city again. Here's the third thing. They must have control of the Temple Mount, and the temple must be rebuilt and worship must be restored. They must have control of the Temple Mount, the temple must be rebuilt, and worship restored. Right now, in Israel, the Temple Institute has all of the implements, all of the clothing, all of the things they need to restore temple worship has been completed, except one thing. They need the ashes of a red heifer. Now, they have a small herd of red heifers that they're hoping will bring them that red heifer. At one point, they thought they had the red heifer, but it turned out that it was blemished. It has to be what is actually an anomaly, a perfect red heifer with no blemishes, with no other color, but that perfect red heifer. They're hoping they have that now, and we'll see. But they can't restore temple worship without having the ashes of that perfect red heifer. Like I said, it's an amazing anomaly. It's actually a miracle almost to have that. So we're waiting to see. But they've got everything ready for the temple. And many say, well, it can't be built. They don't have, but see, that's what's going to happen. When that peace accord signs, they're going to be given access to the Temple Mount. They're going to be given permission to rebuild their temple, and they're going to restore temple worship. Wow. And because everything is ready, that can happen very quickly once they're given that permission. And the fourth thing that has to happen is there must be a prince of the people. The prince of the people. There must be a world system that establishes the ability for the rise of this one person to rise up and make that peace covenant with Israel. And make that 7-year peace covenant with Israel. But there has to be that entity. And there's never been that kind of global governance until right now. You've got the UN and then the World Economic Forum. And never in the history of mankind has one entity had power and control over all the nations of the earth like what took place in 2020 with the World Health Organization out of the UN having that kind of power and control that the world sheltered in place and just shut everything down around the world. Wow. Wow, what authority and power they had. Now the World Economic Forum with their ESGs are literally controlling the banking, manufacturing, and industry of the world through their ESGs. What incredible power and force. We are seeing that entity coming into place for global governance and for that prince to be able to rise up that makes that peace covenant. And then there must be a war of sufficient stature. This is the fifth thing that brings about that peace covenant. What we're seeing right now going on with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the proxies of Iran. But even greater, what we see happening with Iran and their proxies and Russia and China. What we're going to do in our next study, we're going to look at these last two items in detail. There must be a war of sufficient stature to bring about that peace covenant, and the peace covenant to be broken after 3.5 years. All of that, how's that going to work out? How's that going to take place? Well, we're going to look at that in our next podcast. I hope you will join me. Let me share with you, I have a teaching series, 16 one-hour lessons in this DVD series, Where Are We on God's Time Clock, that goes into much greater detail. And you can order this for $40 from my website. Go to Dr. Dean Foundation at foundationalu.org, Dr. Dean at foundationalu.org, and you can order this DVD series. There's 16 one-hour lessons that goes into where are we on God's time clock, and I hope that you will order this series. I also hope that you'll join me on my blog site, fdeanhackett.com. God bless you. Thank you for joining me today. Just want to urge you to subscribe and click like. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today. This Christ-centered biblical training is a ministry of Spirit Life Ministries. We hope that you are blessed by this podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. For more information or questions for Dr. Dean, please contact us at the website fdeanhackett.com.